Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to What's on the Playlist today. Today I want to talk about The Foundation by the Zac Brown Band, an image of which you will see here. Um, Zac Brown had been writing and performing for quite a while on his own um, before he the Zac Brown Band had went through a couple iterations. Um, he'd been performing, touring a lot, eventually opened up like a southern, home stock cooking restaurant with his father. It got bought out. He took the money to buy a tour bus, started touring around, got some national notice. Um, this is not his first actual album. This is what's considered his first studio album. His first album, I think, was called Homegrown. I'm not sure, but he self-produced that one. This was like his first big studio album that he recorded. It's one of the few albums of him that I have. So it's not quite his debut album, but sort of kind of is. When you got, this is the album that got him national attention. This peaked at number 9 on the U.S. Billboard charts and number 2 in the country charts. The fact that this is kind of a crossover between, this got radio play on non-country stations. The singles from the album are, I think, Toes in the Sand, Toes, Chicken Fried, Highway 20 Ride. I know there's one that hit a single, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. But Chicken Fried was their debut single from this album. I found out reading up on this, there was actually some controversy around that song. Apparently, another band, I think the Lost Translations, I think is the name of the band, Lost something or other. They had asked Zac Brown if they could do a cover of the song. And he told them, yes, just don't put it on the radio. Which their record label wound up doing. They record the cover, and he said, the first time I heard that on the radio, it's like, no. Zac Brown's like, the first time he heard someone else performing that song on the radio, it's like, nope, pull it. They had to get the lawyers involved. It's like, no, this is our song. I said you could play it. I said you could put it on an album, but don't, that was a bit much for him. The music itself, it's definitely a country album, but it's got, to me at least, it's got a slightly different feel to it. It doesn't feel like super country-y. It's not quite folk music. I mean, I know they've recorded songs with Jimmy Buffett and did Toes? Is that Toes? I'm not sure. I know that they had one song that they performed with Jimmy Buffett, and I'm not sure it was that one. Maybe not. But they do have that kind of feel to them. Jimmy Buffett has his own brand and his own sound, but the style and the attitude that he has, I think the Zac Brown Band side of that's why I think the song that they did perform and works so well is that they have the same kind of attitude to their music and their songwriting. They can handle heavier topics and heavier lyrics, but overall they seem like a bunch of good old boys who are just having a good time. Which I think is what made the music appeal to me. There's also not a lot of electric music to it. It's a much more an acoustic sound, which again, I tend to gravitate towards. Having said that, I am not a fan of country music. This is one of the few actual country musicians that I have in my collection. Well, have on my playlist. This actually is my wife's CD. My wife is big into country music. It's less of my thing, and I joke about hating country music, but I don't really. My one true animosity towards country music is the local country station, which I call home of the all repeat workday, because they do. Man, when my wife and I would carpool to work, and she would be playing the country radio station. So listening to the morning AM block, I get to work, they'd be playing it in the warehouse. So, the 8 to noon block, and then the afternoon block, 12 to 4, and then my wife would pick me up at 5, which I had already been listening from 4 to 5, and then on the drive home. So, I was basically listening to like 4 blocks of music during the day. Yeah. And I would hear the same songs constantly repeated all day long. That was really drove me to start saying I hated country music. It wasn't the music itself. It's not necessarily my thing. I'm nothing against it personally. But there are a few, I grew up listening to, through my parents, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, that style of country music. That's the stuff I grew up on. And I don't really have any of it in my collection, but I do appreciate it. I do like it. It's just, some of them I haven't gotten around to buying yet, and some of them I just kind of never felt the need for it. They were more of like, it's okay. I've got enough music. I don't need to add that, add stuff that I'm kind of, just sort of like. But this I like a lot. And it's rare that I find a country performer that I like as much as the Zac Brown Band. This is probably of all the country music that the few that I do have are ones that I generally like a lot. And as I said, this is something I kind of lifted from my wife's music collection. I have a couple other ones, but that's one of the few that I've borrowed from her. And she has borrowed some, added some of my stuff to her playlist as well. But I thought it was worth mentioning. Um, I highly recommend it because it's fun music. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And I'm rushing this because I haven't want to go eat lunch. And until next time, good hunting.